I'm going to go ahead with the meeting beginning ritual.
起立，面向佛堂，参加三鞠躬、一鞠躬、再鞠躬、三鞠躬，参加各位点传世一鞠躬，开班一鞠躬，请坐下。Please be seated.
And as always, welcome everybody to another thrilling installment of our online Tao study group. Give me just 1 second to turn the ringer off on my work phone. There we go. I'm sure you'll all appreciate not being dinged at every 40 or 50 seconds. There are those who would maintain that I have steadfastly refused to do the word that is in the middle of my opening slide here, to evolve. I promise you that's not the case. But yeah, today I want to chat just a little bit about evolution in a perhaps a hopefully somewhat unexpected and informative manner. There are, and I say this from time to time, times in my life where I take advantage of an opportunity to do some introspection and hindsight and kind of an examination of my life to date. And one of those days is August the 4th, because that's my birthday. And this year I turned 60. I'm officially an old man. Just ask my kids. Yeah, for me, 60 was kind of a milestone. There was a significant period of my life where I didn't think I was going to live long enough to see 60. And now that I've gotten there, I was kind of a little depressed and a little overjoyed at the same time. I don't know why, because none of the other decades in my life caused me any difficulty. I had no trouble with 30, 40, or 50, but 60 for me was something I kind of had to chew on for a bit to get over. And I did that. But part of the process of getting a little older was for me to sit down and kind of think about things for a bit. I did that too. Of all the questions that I get asked from all of the people all over who ask me questions, and there are several of them, so far, nobody has ever asked me what the purpose of life is. I'm grateful for that, because I'm not sure I have the right answer. I'm not sure I'm even remotely qualified to try to answer that question. I do, however, have my opinions on the subject, and that's one of the things that I stopped to consider while I was both recovering from pneumonia and getting older by the moment at the same time. Ralph Waldo Emerson says that the purpose of life is not to be happy, it is to be useful, to be honorable, to be compassionate, to have it make some difference that you have lived and lived well. I personally happen to really love this quote from Emerson. I think he got remarkably close to hitting the nail right on the head with that. It's very closely aligned with my own personal opinion. That's not the end of the talk, though. Sorry. I took a look at several articles from the Judeo-Christian tradition, and the one that summed it up the best for me, I think, is the second one. The purpose of life is rather simple. God created the universe with the Big Bang, and then during the early days of civilization announced that he has something even better coming. He said that admission will be free to everyone as long as they follow 10 simple rules. Those are known as the commandments, the 10 commandments. And, of course, because it's a representative sampling and we're all a bunch of philosophical Taoists, I did a little digging until I found something and it didn't take much, from the Religion Facts website, that described what the purpose of life according to those who preach philosophical Taoism should be. The ideal person in philosophical Taoism is the sage who understands and lives in accordance with the Tao, knowing that all opposites are relative and interdependent, and that the best way to live is in harmony with the natural course of things, the Tao. A Taoist does not struggle, oppose, or strive. Those are all fairly lofty statements, and all of them try to sum up an existence that really, quite frankly, nobody understands. We all have to discover for ourselves what our ultimate truth is. We can look to others for some guidance, some experience, some advice, some words of encouragement on that path. But ultimately, this question is up to us. That's why I'm happy that nobody's ever hit me with this when the only thing that I could ever give them is just my opinion. These opinions are worth consuming and considering. But if you're going to consume and consider them, you got to understand that you and you alone have to choose what you're going to accept for your life. And that's true of an awful lot of things. There are a lot of people who believe that the purpose of life is to evolve in some way, to leave the world better than we found it, to make things better where we are, or at least to make things different than it was. Some people put some serious consideration into that evolution. Some people put no thought into it at all. And some folks steadfastly refuse to even attempt it. I am what I am. It's my nature. Nothing's going to move. There are those who believe that the purpose of life is simply to reproduce and die. They point to a billion species of insects that do that very thing, right? And that is a valid point of view at some point. When you watch ants and cicadas and other insects, we have tons of cicadas right now. They're kind of fun to watch. You know, their lifespan is measured in days, 2, 3 to 7 days. It takes them 7 to 14 years to hatch and emerge from the ground, and then they get to live for maybe 72 hours. And in that period of time, they mature, they mate, they lay eggs, and they die. The purpose of that life is reproduction, perhaps. Others think the purpose of life is simply to survive, to reach the end of our lives without having had something bigger than we are kill us and eat us. And there are those who believe that the purpose of life is simply for it to end, that we wander through the years that we have, and the direction that we take and the things that we do have no consequence, because there is no purpose to this existence other than to get through it and get over it. I find that to be a remarkably sad commentary on living a life without joy, a life without direction or purpose, except to eventually one day wind up at the end of it. And every one of these statements is the truth. They are. Every person evolves during the course of their lives, whether they want to or not, in some way or another. Hopefully, we're all going to survive long enough to pass our genes into the next generation. The reproductive imperative is not an option, it's a compulsion from nature. It is one of the things that drives every species on this planet. The survival imperative, like the reproductive imperative, is not something one can typically choose to participate in or not. It usually is a compulsion. If somebody's about to drop a car on you, you're going to do everything you can to get out of the way. None of us wants to die. And one day, whether we want to or not, our lives will end. So those statements are all the truth. Really and truly, the purpose of our lives is to return. The returning is the movement of the Tao. Daodejing chapter 40, first 2 lines. To return, to continue, to learn the lessons we need to know, and to move on. Those are things we can choose to do, or not. But if we choose to do them, then we're going somewhere. When I ask other people what the purpose of life is, most of them say the purpose of life is to be happy, to find a way to be happy, to be joyful, to have peace in my life, to be able to acquire the things that I want, to be happy. And then I ask, well, how do you do that? Oh, well, I go and get a new car, I get a bigger house, I get a better job, I do something for a living that I'm passionate about. The list is always the list of secular activities that supposedly are going to buy happiness. The thing is, in the pursuit of happiness, we buy things that we don't really need. We chase relationships that really aren't good for us. We stay in vocations that we hate. And we spend countless years comparing ourselves to everybody else around us to see whether or not we're as happy as we ought to be. And if we're not, we engage in behaviors that are very often decidedly unenlightened. My spell checker says that's not a word. I disagreed. And at the end of all of it, did we attain the happiness that we sought? Are we happy? Did we get what we wanted? Usually not. That's what keeps the ad agencies in business. The path to that happiness is not acquisition, it's evolution. It's the evolution of the mind so that we can learn to become enlightened, so that we can understand ourselves, so that we know what we need and not just what we think we want. That is an unbelievably difficult process. It's a process I go through every day, sometimes several times a day, because it is extremely easy to be overwhelmed by the pursuit of what I think is going to make me happy in the moment, to the exclusion of what's really good for me. It is the difference between what we think we want and what we know we need. It is the pursuit of the world to the exclusion of the pursuit of the spirit. And that is not to say that we cannot have secular success and wealth and prosperity and all of the stuff that goes along with it. Derek and I just got done talking in small measure about that very thing. Within the Yuguan Dao, the people who apply and follow the teachings and who have done it for a long time, the people who have figured out how to make the teachings work for them, enjoy a balanced spiritual and secular life that both function extremely well. I talk about the success of the ordained masters frequently, and one in particular, Master William Guo, because he's a dear friend of mine and he's allowed me to look inside his life and his family's life, and he and I talk fairly often, and he helps me to understand how some of these things work. Same thing with Derek and his wife. They've been gracious enough to befriend me and to allow me into their family and into their lives to see and understand how things work, and very forthcoming and open about how the teachings function for them. And all of these folks are remarkably secularly successful and have a functioning, healthy, productive, moving spiritual existence that is evolving their minds as well as their spirits to maintain both the balance and the success. We have the secrets to that evolution all around us if only we can look at it and understand it. And none of it has anything to do with the pursuit of what we think is going to make us happy. That is not necessarily the right question. Evolution is the evolution of the spiritual path so that we can learn and understand what the ultimate truth is for ourselves. Once again, ultimate truth about the purpose of anybody's individual life is not a topic that can be taught. I can't sit down with any one of you and tell you what the purpose of your life is. I can tell you that you are on a spiritual path, a karmic path, a path that contains a mission that you are supposed to be here for, something that you're supposed to do. Kind of like in the Matrix movies where the gentleman explains to Keanu Reeves that karma is a word. What it means is what you are here to do. When you understand what that task is, what it is you're supposed to do here, that understanding unlocks the doors and smooths out the roadways of life. And things become more effortless and more joyful, and accomplishments seem to miraculously occur where they're supposed to. But that requires the spiritual journey and evolution of understanding to get to that point. It requires the process of introspection to help us understand ourselves better so that we can make the right choices to bring us to the accomplishment of those goals. I'm watching this process occur in my son Aaron right now. He spent several years trying to understand his place within the Tao teachings and what his path and mission is. And, I watch him going through this, and I don't think what he's going through is abnormal. It has caused him to spend a good deal of time in introspection, meditation, and self-examination to understand himself so that he can understand where it is he thinks he needs to go. Some of those things he's figured out. He's only 20 years old. And some of those things he's still figuring out. And I look at him and I look at myself and I think, wow, I'm 60 years old and I'm still doing the same doggone thing. So, and I am. I think at some level we all are. So, but I'm watching this process unfold in him, and it's a remarkable thing to see the process at work in somebody else. It's very, very difficult to see it in ourselves because we're right there in the middle of it. But for those of us who are blessed enough to have children who are also following this path, we get the opportunity to observe and sometimes to help. It is the evolution of compassion so that we can understand other people. Compassion is an unbelievably important aspect of our lives. Without it, the doors to other people's hearts are pretty largely closed. But with it, little understanding, some kindness, some gentleness, the understanding that other people are also on a spiritual path, that they are trying to fulfill a purpose that some of them may not understand yet. We have the ability to approach them with a degree of kindness and gentility that we should use on others, but not necessarily always on ourselves. We need to examine ourselves pretty rigorously, but we need to be kind and gentle with others. And the evolution and establishment and nurturing of this compassionate heart and attitude is the way that is done. It's the evolution of our actions so that we can behave like enlightened beings while we're on the way to enlightenment. Once again, it's that path of gentleness and kindness wherever possible. While I don't agree with everything that I see on the internet regarding the practice of philosophical Taoism, the statement that we shouldn't be striving, struggling, competing, and carrying on, I find to be accurate and wise. Because those things don't produce any worthwhile benefit for us. They only produce bad feelings, ill will, and a lot of stress and anxiety. I don't know about you guys, but I don't need any more stress and anxiety in my life. I get plenty of that just from working. But I love what I do, so I don't quit. It takes a certain amount of practice, not only to evolve the mind and the spirit, but to evolve the behavior. And this is something with which I'm well familiar, because over the last 10 or 15 years or so, however long Derek and I've known each other, the Tao teachings have evolved my behavior along with my mind and my spirit to the point where I am no longer the person I used to be, and people who knew me back then sometimes wonder what it was that happened to me that made me different. I used to be a lot harder, a lot tougher, a lot less gentle on other people. Now I feed birds, and I'm gentle and kind with everybody I can be. That was a process, and it was a pretty protracted process. It took a while. Derek knew me when I was much rougher around the edges, and his observations may be enlightening in that regard. See, the Tao path is not something that we do for a year or two and then we're done. It's a lifelong path of evolution that leads us back to a spiritual root, to a natural state of being, to a point where the spirit is refined and the mind is trained and the body is healthy and taken care of, and the result of that care is a person who can behave in an enlightened fashion. And in a lot of cases, that evolutionary process to the outside observer will appear to be counterintuitive to the goal of the pursuit of happiness and to the evolution of a spiritual path. Because that evolution involves giving up the things in our lives that do not benefit us in one way or another. The things that are detrimental or toxic to our spiritual or mental development are gone, as well they should be. All the stuff that used to clutter our lives, the stuff that we thought was going to make us happy, all the crap we just went out and bought, no longer needs to be there, and we're not attached enough to it to keep it. What a joy and a blessing it is to be able to go through the clutter of my life and be rid of it, to simplify it, to unclutter it, to remove it. Those things make me happy. And not only do I do that in my garage and in my home, but I do that in my heart and in my mind. It's one of the most powerful teachings that we teach in the Guandao, is how to unclutter the life so that it functions. Think about perhaps sailing a boat. If you take everything that you own and put in that boat, how deep does it sit in the water? How heavy is it? If you unclutter it, if you get rid of the stuff that doesn't contribute to moving the boat to where you're going, how much lighter is it? How much better does it sail? I physically feel lighter when I unclutter my garage. There's a connection there between me, my junk, and the trash can that functions. It is remarkably interesting. I hope that some of my allegories, stories, and comparisons have made things a little clearer for you. This is a tough topic to broach, and sometimes a difficult topic to understand. The truth is that so often, we lose sight of the genuine and authentic truth in the pursuit of what we think is going to bring us happiness, that every now and again it doesn't hurt to be reminded of where that is. because real happiness stems from a genuine understanding. It's a deep indwelling of spiritual truth and life balance that comes from a life of practice and discipline. And every now and again, you know, we all fall off the path, and every now and again we need a hand to get our feet back on it. But we can achieve both happiness and enlightenment if we can maintain our focus on that path. I talk about the path a lot. The very first article I ever wrote in the Yuguandao was on walking, which was a description of that journey. To this day, that description has not changed. I still see it exactly that way. Wide, broad path, kind of like a meadow, with green grass growing on it and flowers everywhere and trees on the sides, maybe with a stream running down next to it. I started out alone, but there are other people on it, and every now and again, you know, I walk along with somebody else for a while, and then maybe they go their way and I go mine, sometimes not. And that's the path. There aren't any signs there that tell me where I'm going or that tell me what the right answer is. There just is the path. And as long as I stay on it, I'm okay. I guess the hardest part to consider here is that, you know, one day every life ends. It does. And I know for a fact that I have a lot fewer days in front of me than I have behind me, but that doesn't really scare me. The thing is, each day between today and the day that this life ends can be a day full of joy and happiness if we keep our feet on that path. And that's what I want to encourage you to do. I hope something I said was useful and helpful to you. And as always, thank you guys so much for letting me share with you.
Let's go ahead and do the meeting ending ritual, everybody. 起立，面向佛堂，持架三鞠躬，一鞠躬，再鞠躬，三鞠躬，持架各位顶传十一鞠躬，结班一鞠躬。Well done, everybody. Thank you so much.